Hi there, this is a short video to show the main features of ImmerGo for StudioLive devices. The video starts with immediate high-level features and then moves on to more detailed aspects. Broadly, ImmerGo is an immersive sound program that allows you to move StudioLive sound inputs in 3D space. The 3D space is depicted as a room with speakers inside it, normal speakers like that, and bass speakers which are colored in red. In this video, ImmerGo is connected to the 64S, the StudioLive 64S, but can be connected to any of the StudioLive devices. ImmerGo occupies a small space on the screen, so it can cohabit with a DAW such as Studio One, Presonus StudioLive here, or with universal control, the StudioLive universal control. Below the 3D space are a bunch of controls, and we'll have a look at those now. The top row of controls are the track buttons. These are the mix inputs to the StudioLive device. When ImmerGo is started, these can be configured to be USB, analog, AVB or SD card inputs. You can use the scroll buttons on the left and right to move between the different tracks. At the moment we've got the tracks all configured as USB inputs. You can select a particular track, like track 1 for example, and then move the virtual source around. And as you move the virtual source, you'll see in UC control, what we're looking at here is we're looking at channel 1 and its aux send across to aux 1. And as we move the virtual source, that changes, and the aux sends to all the other aux buses would change as well. The height of the sound can be changed with the slider on the right hand side, so you can make the virtual source higher or lower. And in this case, we're looking at speaker 1. Aux 1 is connected to speaker 1, so it's the one at the top left of the room. And as we go lower, then we get closer to that particular speaker. If you're using a mobile device, you can tilt the mobile device and you'll have the same effect as of moving the virtual source up and down. Looking at the third row, we've got a track volume slider, and as we move that track volume slider up and down, the overall volume of that track will change, and that will be aux sends to all the aux buses that change. We've also got a spread slider that changes the spread of the virtual source, and as we move that, it'll get closer to a position that's going to be much the same. If the spread is very high, it'll be much the same for all the speakers, all the aux buses, that is. There is a master volume slider, and we can change the overall volume of the entire piece with the master bus slider. And what it does is it changes the aux bus outputs for all the aux buses. So if we change to another aux bus, exactly the same will happen. The master volume will change, and as we change the master volume, we'll see the change in the aux bus. A spatial recording can be loaded by clicking the Imload button and then selecting one of the files. I've got Mike Scalandunas' multi-track in Studio One, so I'm going to select the immersive recording that goes with it. So selecting the Imload button and then selecting the spatialisation file that goes with it. The transport controls can be used to play, stop, pause, rewind or fast forward the DAW. Studio One is the DAW shown here, but any other DAW can be used, as long as it allows for MIDI transport control. You can use the display button to display the movement of a track, so get a visual display. So I'm going to select a couple of tracks to display. Let's just do that. So select the track and then push display, and select the track and push display, and so it goes on, selecting a couple of tracks. And can scroll down and select another track, of island track for example. Okay, so you can then just play back the multi-track and you can see the movement of the tracks as you go. And you'll see the time code coming from the DAW. You can also play back multi-channel WAV files and spatialize the individual channels as well. So I'm going to load the Don Camillo. I can just go to WAV control and then I can load up a particular WAV file. I'm going to load up the Don Camillo's marigolds, and then also select the IM file, the spatialisation file that's necessary for, or that I have used to spatialise the marigolds WAV file. Okay, so that'll be a multi-track that's playing back now. You can record a spatialisation by selecting a particular track and pressing the record button followed by play. So let's do a somewhat crazy quick spatialisation. I'll click the record button and then click play and do a rather strange spatialisation. And then, because I've got the track displayed, I can then see that spatialisation happening. Okay, you can save a spatialisation by clicking the save button. So I can save the spatialisation that I've got and type whatever name I want. So let's just type in Marigolds 2, whatever it might be. And then you can mute a track just by clicking the track and then selecting the mute button, and that'll be shown in orange. And you can also solo a track by clicking the track and soloing it, and then all the other tracks will go in orange except for that track. Okay, finally a spatialisation can be removed, like that spatialisation for track 2 there can be removed by just clicking the delete button. It's often interesting to have a look at the actual faders on the mixing console and see how they are adjusted during a localization file playback. So I'm just going to load a WAV file and then a localization file and play that, and we can see the faders on the actual mixing console. What we're looking at here are the changes in sends across to the aux1 from the various mix-ins as the WAV file plays and as the localization changes are made. So the faders will of course move, the send faders. The second row of buttons is all about effects. And here we see those buttons FXA, FXB, FXC, and so it goes on. ImmerGo-StudioLive allows you to select a track and then to select a particular effect, like FXA, for example, in this case. Then when the track is spatialized, the spatialized audio source for the track will contain the dry source mixed with the same source processed by the FX bus effects processor. The level of effect processing on the selected track is controlled via the FX bus volume slider controller. So let's just have a look at that. If we go to the FXA bus and then move that FX bus controller, we'll see the slider, the FX send for FXA moving up and down. If a track is not selected, so let's take off that now, and if the track is not selected, and if we just choose an FX bus, like the FXA bus again, then you will be able to spatialize that bus. So you'll be able to spatialize that FXA bus. And we'll see the effect of that if we just go across to where the buses are for example, aux1, and let's go across to that place and see where the FX bus inputs are for aux1. Just moving across to that, and there we see all the FX buses. And if we now spatialize and move our virtual source, what's happening now is the FXA bus is actually the one that's being spatialized as we move up and down and as we move horizontally as well. You can change the overall level of the FX bus now that you've selected, if you've selected something like FXA, you can change the overall level via that volume now, and there we see the volume slider going up and down, and it can be for FXB as well, and so it goes on. Okay, sorry, I should have shown that FXB moving up and down there. Let's just do that, and there you can see the FX bus slider moving up and down as well if we select FXB. ImmerGo provides a number of settings that we can control. If we go to the settings button, click the settings button. So for example, you can choose a track and set the name of that track. Then you can choose which tracks are going to be sent to bass speakers, and you do that by selecting the bass tracks button and then just selecting the speakers that you want to go. For example, I'm choosing tenors and bass in this case. You can link tracks. For example, I can select the tenors track, I can select the tenors track and then choose link tracks to link a track, and I can link to soprano, and then those two tracks are linked. That means if you spatialize the one track, the other track will be spatialized in unison. Okay, so let's unlink now. And you've got an up-down button, and this is particularly useful if you on a mobile device. Then you can utilize the gyroscope for the height of the virtual source. There are a group of buttons down below here now that you can use for rendering algorithm selection. And there are many approaches to sound source localization. There's distance-based amplitude panning, DBAP, vector-based amplitude panning, layer-based vector-based amplitude panning, and so it goes on. You can select an approach and then select a track that should use this approach. For example, I can choose vector-based amplitude panning and say, okay, I want the tenors to use that. You will see by default most of the tracks are using distance-based amplitude panning, but for example, I could go to layer-based, vector-based amplitude panning and say I want all those tracks to be spatialized according to that particular algorithm. You may have been wondering where the spatializations get stored, where the WAV files come from, how the StudioLive device inputs are configured, and how the speakers are configured. So to answer these questions, we need to look at the startup window of ImmerGo. The first item to select is a working folder. This is where the speaker configuration will reside, as well as any spatialization and multi-channel WAV files. So let's choose a folder for that. And we can choose, let's go to a demo one. I'll quickly go down to that, choose the working folder demo and open that. That then becomes our working folder. And you can choose to add WAV files to your working folder and also see what the current WAV files are. I'll just add a single WAV file for now. Let's go to where some WAV files are stored and choose from that, and let's just choose one for now and open that. Okay, now since ImmerGo communicates with DAWs via an internal MIDI connection, you will need to select the MIDI port for communication from ImmerGo to the DAW for transport control, and from the DAW to ImmerGo for MIDI timecode display. And here I am selecting the IAC bus 1 for both of those, going backwards and forwards. I can also configure the inputs and outputs. So here I'm going to choose, let's say, 2 analog inputs, and then let's say how many, 20 or 30 USB inputs, and no AVBs and no SD cards for this particular configuration. I then push the configure button, and what I'm then told is to start the client to configure. I've now got to put in the speaker configuration, so that I need to do next, and I've got to do that by pressing the client button, and the client then says there's no speaker configuration file. Do you want to configure the speakers? And of course, yes, I do. The client display for speaker configuration will be an empty room that you can furnish with speakers. You can change the dimensions of the room before you start adding speakers. And then for speaker configuration, you just click on a speaker and click the add button. And then you can move the speaker to whatever position you want in the room. For example, you can raise the height and just raise it to a higher position, and of course select your horizontal position as well. If you want to check where the actual speakers are in fact situated in your room, you can beep the speaker to get an idea of where the real speaker is, and you can control the volume of that beep with a beep slider. I know roughly what the volume should be, so let's just beep that once per speaker, and you can carry on adding speakers in that way, beeping, determining where they are, adding into their position. Let's put that at the same height. And now if you want to add a bass speaker, you would, in the same way, click the speaker, click a speaker button, and then just press add once again, and let's have the bass speaker down at the bottom of the room, and then you would click the bass button, and that would indicate that it's a bass speaker. Okay, I've added a couple more speakers. What you'll see is I've added one right at the top of the room, a voice of God speaker. And once you're satisfied with the configuration that you've created, what you can do is save that configuration and then go across to the controls and see whether the configuration of speakers is as you want it. You'll see the slightly different shape of speaker for the voice of God speaker when it's up at the top in the center of the room. Okay, what we can now do is load up an IM file. Let's do that, Scalandunis again, which will take up the USB parts of the track arrangement. And you can now modify or spatialize the analog inputs as well as the USB input. So let's just play that and at the same time see the playback of the analog inputs. So now I can move the analog inputs around, and you'll see the input on the first mix input, which is an analog input, and we can go to the second one as well and change that. So you can change the analog inputs at the same time as you change the as you have the DAW playing. On a mobile device, you can install the ImmerGo app from the Google Play Store for Android devices or the Apple App Store for iOS devices. When you open the ImmerGo app, you'll see much the same display as on a computer. So it looks much the same as we see up here. You can go to settings and select the up-down checkbox. And if I do this and then select the fourth input, let me just select that and then go across to the fourth input. Then when I tilt the device up and down, you'll see the fourth input and I've got aux1 selected, so that's an aux send from the fourth input going to aux1 as I tilt the device, and I'm changing the aux send from the mobile device. Okay, as with computer-based ImmerGo, I can play the DAW project and the time code will be reflected on both displays. So I've got the Scalandunis project, and let me just get my mouse going and get it across to there. So I've got the Scalandunis project loaded. If I now go to the mobile device and I play, then I will be playing the Scalandunis project from the mobile device. And I can then stop that again. So I've got transport controls on the mobile device. And you could see the faders moving. Let's just see that again. The faders moving because I've got the Scalandunis localization file loaded there. Okay, what I can also do from the mobile device, I can select a spatialisation file, so different from the Scalandunis one. So let me do that, loading an IMM file, marigolds, which we've seen previously, and let me go across to WAV control on the mobile device, and now I should be able to play that marigolds file also. Okay, and you can see the time code once again on the computer display, and it's also showing here on the mobile device. Okay, so I've stopped that. When I select a track on the mobile device, you'll see that it is unavailable on the computer. Let me do that. I'll select track 4 again, and there you'll see there's a red boundary to that fourth track. So what you can have multiple people on multiple mobile devices, all selecting a track or subset of tracks, and being able to change the volume of the track or do whatever they want to do with the track that you can do typically from a computer. And you can also, each person can be recording on a different track at the same time. There is a scheduler in ImmerGo that allows you to schedule a series of multi-channel WAV files together with their spatialisation files. The schedule can be looped, and this is ideal for installations where you would like a continuously playing series of spatialised multi-tracks. You can reach the scheduler by first clicking WAV control and then clicking schedule. And then you've got a table with a bunch, which is going to be filled with a bunch of entries. Let's do the first one. So you just click add, and I'm going to just load up a very short one to show the movement from the first to the second. And you can carry on doing this, adding the Amazon WAV file together with its spatialisation file. Thanks to Augustin Luder for the stems of this Amazon file. And then let's add a third as well, Electronica, also thanks to Augustine. Okay, so you can play that, and what you should see are movements of the sliders. I've got the aux1 display again, so it's going to be aux sends across to aux1, which is connected to a particular speaker. Okay, so let's play that. And we see the movement, quick playback of that bubble sound, and then now the Amazon file playing with the spatialisations happening. These are the aux sends that are changing to aux1. You can change the loop count of each entry, so you could have that one playing twice and that 3 times, or as many times as you want. So you can loop each entry as many times as you want, and you can also loop the entire schedule. So I can have that on and off. Okay, so Electronica is playing now with its spatialisation file, also changing its aux sends in the particular way that it's been set up to do. Okay, let's stop that. You can save your schedule. For example, let's call that schedule 2, and then you can go back to WAV control and continue with whatever you were doing, recording or whatever. Okay, that's the end of this introduction to ImmerGo. If you want to purchase ImmerGo-StudioLive, then you can go to the ImmersiveDSP website. Make sure that you download the demo and ensure that it works with your particular system and with your particular device also. In the downloads, from the downloads tab, you can download both the demo and the manual. Okay, so if you have any questions, please do contact us via the website, get in contact with us, and thank you very much for your interest in ImmerGo.